to locate, identify, and isolate that package.
To be clear, sir, which of the two packages was found first? Was it Dubai, and that led you to East Midlands, or was there any connection?
The first one that was found was East Midlands.
So did that lead you to Dubai then?
The first one we found was East Midlands.
Christy?
John, the other packages that are being looked at, were they also addressed to destinations in Chicago or also to Jewish organizations?
There were two packages, as I said, that we identified, one in Dubai and one in East Midlands. Both of them were addressed to synagogues in Chicago.
And can you say if any of the other packages that you're looking at now are also addressed to Chicago?
With all the mail that goes through the system, I'm not going to say that there isn't something. But again, the only two packages that we've been able to identify of concern are the one in Dubai and one in East Midlands. All the other efforts that we have underway is to see whether or not there's something else out there of concern that we can similarly isolate.
Were either of the Chicago synagogues the one next to the president's house, where I believe he will be staying this weekend?
No. Josh?
Mr. Brennan, can you just clarify, so you found the first package after the president was briefed on this issue last night, is that correct?
Yes, from a sequencing standpoint, yes.
And is it your belief that the institutions in Chicago were the targets of the attack and not, say, the cargo flights? Because you made some reference to the security of cargo flights and so forth. The intent was to injure people at these institutions?
It is less than 24 hours since we first started to look at this very intensively, and so it's still the very early stage of the investigation and the analysis as far as the intended target, the impact of the explosives, how it could have been used, and I don't want to speculate at this point at this time.
Yes, sir.
Can you just give us any more detail on just the size of these packages? Are these letter bombs? Are they large boxes? And is it your belief that they were designed perhaps to explode when opened? Can you give us more detail?
They were not letters. They were larger than that. Think about bread boxes or so in terms of maybe size. We don't know yet how they were intended to be activated.
So we don't know if they had a detonator or a main charge?
There are a number of things that we know, and we're piecing together those puzzle pieces, and we're working very closely with the British and Emirati authorities. But at this point, there's a lot of forensic work that needs to be done, and it's still early.
Sam?
Mr. Brennan, is the terror threat level being raised? Is there also? I'm just curious, was there any discussion with these planes in the air, the President's shoot-down authority, or landing them elsewhere?
No, there was no discussion of that. What we're looking for were packages, and therefore we took the steps that were appropriate to ensure that we were able to identify where packages were globally as well as where they might be as they were coming into the United States. And so the measures that we took were appropriate to the concern that we had at that time.
Sure.
We are right now making sure that we are able to stay as vigilant as possible. There's been no adjustment of the threat level in terms of color code or whatever else. But as a result of this, we're making sure that we work very closely with our state and local officials, and law enforcement, homeland security, and intelligence communities are very much on their guard.
Chuck?
I guess I want to clarify, and it follows up on Ian's question. With the packages themselves, what made the packages suspicious, or something else led you to the packages?
As I said, the American people should be very pleased that we were able to get insight into the fact that there were suspicious packages out there that we had to find. And I'm not going to go into those operational details. I think that's the reason why we have a security system in place that has these redundancies and the ability to detect things from inception all the way to the possible execution of an operation. So we were onto this, but I'm not going to go into details about how we knew.
So it's fair to say you were looking for these suspicious packages?
We were looking for packages that were of concern, yes.
Yes, sir.
Any impact whatsoever on the President's Asia trip in terms of threat level assessments at all?
Whenever the President travels, we take a very careful look at what the threat environment might be and look at what the terrorist environment is. So we're taking this into account, but at this point there is no effect.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brennan, early on there had been a lot of speculation that this might be some kind of a dry run. Given what you do know about these packages now, would you say that this was more than just a dry run?
I'm concerned that since there were explosive materials in it, a traditional dry run is something that you would not necessarily use with explosive materials. That said, I don't know yet what exactly the intent was at this point. There are a lot of different scenarios that some people have speculated about, but and what we're trying to do is to wrestle this to the ground by doing the good forensic analysis, as well as taking a look from an intelligence standpoint and trying to piece together what we might have known in the past, and that would give us a sense of how this was going to be used.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you say, sir, that Al-Qaeda had changed the locations of the country, and also these are the same people? And finally, is this threat of these packages has anything to do with the Pakistani man arrested from Ashburn, Virginia? Because he spoke in the past that attacks will be taking place in the Washington area.
There is no indication whatsoever that the individual arrested yesterday had anything to do with this plot. Al-Qaeda in the Yemen Peninsula is an organization of several hundred individuals that are dispersed throughout the country. They are murderers, and they are determined to carry out attacks against innocent lives, whether they be Yemeni, Americans, Westerners, or others. We are working very closely with the Yemeni government, and we've been able to make some significant progress against Al-Qaeda in the Yemen Peninsula inside of Yemen, working with those partners. We'll continue to do this. If anything, this just demonstrates to us, and I think to the Yemenis as well, that we need to redouble our efforts so that we are able to destroy Al-Qaeda, and we will.
Josh.
Finally, if you have briefed the Indian government because the president's plans next week, as far as this threat is concerned?
We share on a regular basis with the Indian government. The Indian government is one of our best CT partners.
Josh.
Do you think, Mr. Brennan, in the past when there have been specific attacks, as been highlighted by the administration, that terrorists have had to modify their ways because of the hurdles that the government has thrown up in front of them? Do you think that's the case that we saw here, that the use of cargo planes instead of passenger planes reflect the intense scrutiny that passenger aircraft have gotten in the last year or so since they've come under being used as a vehicle for attacks?
Absolutely. The Al-Qaeda organization has tried to adapt to all of the obstacles and hurdles we put in front of it, and that's why we have to remain very agile. We have to make sure that we stay one step ahead of them. But clearly they are looking to identify vulnerabilities in our system and take advantage of those vulnerabilities. But fortunately, because of, again, the good work of the people here, as well as the very important partnership that we have with our allies overseas, we've been able to stay ahead of them.
Are you surprised that they keep focusing on airplanes? So long after 9/11, that still remains an attraction for them?
There's nothing about Al-Qaeda that surprises me anymore, and that's why we have to be prepared to deal with every eventuality that is out there.
How did your response to this in the last 24 or 36 hours to this incident differ from the response to Abdul Muttalib over the holidays last year? And what did you learn from the last year attempted Christmas Day bombing that helped you better prepare for this?
In some respects, they're very different because you're dealing with two packages as opposed to an individual, but in other respects that there are similarities. Whenever something like this happens, what we want to do is to make sure that we take all appropriate measures to identify additional threats that are out there. Whether it's somebody who arrived in Detroit or whether a package is found in East Midlands, we're trying to find, are there other individuals that are trying to blow up a plane? Are there other packages out there? And so the community kicked into gear right away and took those steps so that we would find out where those packages were and take the appropriate steps with TSA, FAA, and others. And the system worked very, very well.
Sam, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, how do you respond to? There's sure to be accusations that this is all happening, a couple days before an election, used to sway the election towards Democrats. How do you respond to that?
I think John briefed the president at 10:35 last night off of very credible terror information, and after, I think that's largely put to rest any speculation that may be out there after the testing the president talked about that showed apparent explosives in those devices. As John said, counterterrorism officials at all levels of our government quickly went into action in order to take the steps necessary to protect the American people. That is exactly what has governed his actions and the actions of those in this government since that time. Jake?
How many credible threats have come from Yemen in the last 2 years?
There are a number of threat streams that we've been following, a number of individuals that we're very concerned about. I wouldn't put a number to it.
Dozens? We know under 10? How many?
Well, it's a question about whether or not there's reports of a threat that may be separate from other reporting. Is it part of the same threat stream? Sometimes we're concerned that Al-Qaeda is trying to carry out some type of attack, so we might have dozens upon dozens of reports related to that one attack. So over the past year, the intelligence community, the counterterrorism community, has been kept very busy with reports about Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula trying to carry out attacks in Yemen, in that region, as well as against the United States.
Is it fair to call AQAP the primary terrorist threat to the United States?
I think my concern is outside of the Afghan-Pakistan area where the Al-Qaeda core and the senior leadership reside. I would say that the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is the most active operational franchise right now of Al-Qaeda, and that this is one that deserves a lot of our attention.
Chip?
Any concerns, Robert, that the president's going to be having a rah-rah rally tonight while all the cable channels and local news stations and everybody else is going to be airing this terrorism scare?
No, again, Chip, I think the president was quite clear on this, that we are taking this threat very seriously. At the same time, he is not, and I don't think the American people should, have any reason to change the way they go about their lives or change their schedule. I will say this, that we are, regardless of whatever season we're in, our commitment, Democrat and Republican, to keep this country safe will not waver.
Will he talk about this tonight?
Again, I'm going to check on that when I go back. Listen, I'm going to get John back to working on this. We will, as we get information, update you if there are any additions to his schedule or what have you over the course of the weekend. Stay in touch, and we'll let you know as we get more information. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you.